Hello and welcome to everybody to the virtual conference live talks with myself, Dov Benyaacov-Kurtzman. And do we have a special treat for you today, a special guest, one that I have the privilege of calling a colleague and a friend. I love his work and I'm sure you do too. We have already lots of people logging on, streaming to see this brilliant stream we have on Facebook, YouTube, Facebook groups, Facebook pages. So wherever you're coming in from, please already put in the comments, say hello, put in the comments, you know, what your questions are for my special guest. Of course, it's Russ Harris. So when he's come on, he's sitting in the green room right now, and I want a great welcome for Russ when he comes in. I've known Russ's work for a long time now. I think I've bought most of his books, if not all of them. I read them over and over again. In fact, I remember a video a long time ago that I came across Russ when he walked into a dark room with a torch and started shining on different bits of furniture, etc. I thought that was very intriguing. And then I started to follow Russ from there. Of course, the special hands exercise that he does and the grounding and all sorts of treats and things to do with ACT. One thing I find amazing about Russ is how he can take things that are sometimes complicated, sometimes intricate and a little bit confusing maybe, and simplifies it all down so that anyone can really understand this. It's absolutely amazing. Russ Harris, of course, is an MD, is a physician, a doctor, as well as an ACT trainer. And he is famous for also his humor, but something very special, which is his wide range of fancy shirts. In any case, if this show is not about me, it's about you and it's about my guest. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome everybody to Russ Harris.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me here. I'm feeling a bit like a fraud imposter because I don't have any of my fancy shirts on. If I had known you were going to mention that, then I would have put some of my fancy shirts on.
There you go. But beautiful background you have there. It's very nice. It sounds like you're at home.
Yes, I am. You know, I've kind of set up to shoot in front of my bookcase. It makes me look very intelligent. Luckily, you can't see that they're actually all graphic novels and comics. They're mostly Wolverine, Deadpool, and The Walking Dead. So, you know, I've probably just shattered the illusion there, but it looks good.
No, wonderful. So, first of all, thank you very much for taking time out and joining me here. This is a pleasure for me and for everybody watching, but I know that you're in great demand. You're a very busy person in general. And so thank you for just taking this time out.
No, you're welcome. Nice to be here. It's kind of a bit, it's 9 p.m. over here in Australia, 9:06 p.m. So I'm kind of just winding down for the evening.
Okay, so that's one of them. So there's people coming in and watching this from all over the world, but I just want to tell everybody that Russ was prepared to come on this at 7 a.m. his time. Remember?
Yes.
So, but we changed that. But what I'd like to say is, first of all, that shows your committed action to the work that you do, that you were willing
dedication,
to do.
Committed action. Nothing will stop me. Yeah.
But we did manage to change it to later in the day for you. So it's winding down time. So that's great. Yeah. Basically, I want to tell everybody that they can send comments in. This is an interactive. We're not on for very long. It's not about me. It's about you and everybody else. So just let's go over to some of the comments coming in now, Russ, and see what's being said. So we've got a Facebook user who's saying, we'll be happy to hear from Russ Harris' thoughts about returning to life after the coronavirus. Okay, so that will be interesting. We've got hello from Hod Sharon in Israel and from Naphtali in Jerusalem. So hi from South Wales. Question for Russ. This is from Leah Lily Pilling. How do you find time for a life with all the work you do? Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. You do a lot of stuff, Russ. How do you find time for yourself?
Well, I don't watch sports, and I don't watch the news, and I don't read newspapers. So that kind of gives me a lot of extra time. It means that I'm absolutely terrible at trivial pursuits. And if you ask me anything about current affairs or world sports, I know nothing about it. But it does mean I get time to do other things. And of course, it does give me lots of time to read Deadpool and Wolverine comics, which is much more important, I think, than current affairs usually.
Because you do a lot of writing as well, don't you?
I do a lot of writing. Writing is kind of like a hobby for me as well as work. So even when I'm on holiday, people go on holiday and they love to like chill out on the beach. But after a couple of days of chilling out, I like to actually spend some time writing. And on a nice day on holiday, I would do at least 3 or 4 hours of writing, and that would be relaxation time for me. So some of my writing is pretty bad. I've got a number of unpublished novels, and one published novel that flopped miserably. So I'm pretty sure, Dov, when you said you'd read most of my books, I don't think you would have read this one.
Yeah, I mean, this. First of all, thank you, Leah, and everybody else for these questions. There's more coming in, which we'll get to. But taking us to present moment, taking us to what's going on just now in the world, it's just worldwide. Everywhere is affected. How are you personally? I mean, before we start getting into all the, your wisdom and your knowledge, how do you manage it personally? What's happening with you with all this COVID-19 stuff?
Yeah, well, see, I'm in a very privileged position, and I guess I'm more aware and appreciative of that privilege than I've probably ever been in my life. I'm in isolation with a loving family in a nice house with, in Melbourne, which is a beautiful city with really short access to parks and nature and and work that's fulfilling and meaningful that I can do from home and do from my laptop and so forth. So I'm actually feeling an incredible sense of privilege, and actually with that, funnily enough, an increased sense of guilt. It's like as I kind of hear and see so many people suffering out there, it kind of, obviously all of us in the Western world have an incredible sense of privilege. And of course, white middle-class males, are really on the top of that. But it's just become very much in this kind of mixed feelings of like appreciation that I'm in a very lucky position. And with it, a kind of real sense of guilt about all the people out there that are not in such a lucky position.
Okay, so thank you for that. Carmen from Germany is watching, so that's great. And I've got somebody else who's saying that your humor is great. Yeah, you are. You're a funny guy, and I think it's really important, though. Funny guy, not funny guy, but I think the way that you bring over, your teaching has with it, a certain lightheartedness, a certain humor, and I think that's very palatable to sometimes things that are quite serious.
Yeah, well, I think at med school, I failed my first 2 years at uni because I just the teaching was so bad, in my opinion, that I didn't really learn very much, and it kind of left me. I eventually started passing my exams, but it left me with a disdain, if you like, for teaching that is dry and dull. And so I try to inject a bit of humor into my teaching and into my writing. I think if we can have a bit of playfulness and laughter, we learn more readily. And I think many people relate to that, of course, there's a time and a place where there is no room for humor and playfulness. So it's all about, but I'm not sure if I actually answered your question, how I'm coping. So it's kind of at moments I'm feeling this incredible sense of privilege and appreciation. Other moments I'm feeling a sense of guilt about that. At times I'm feeling anxiety. At times I'm feeling frustrated, at being stuck indoors. At times I'm getting angry with the politicians. At times I'm getting on really well with my partner and my kid and my dog, and at other times I'm losing my temper and snapping at them. At times I'm really, using this ACT stuff really well in ways that I'm really proud of, and at other times I'm forgetting everything and acting out in ways that I would hate to be recorded and shown on your show. So I'm really experiencing the full gamut. There's moments where I'm handling this really well, and there's moments where I'm handling this really poorly. And I'm getting a bit frustrated at some of the stuff I'm seeing in social media, the pressure it's putting on people to, you must grow and you must be productive and, use this as an opportunity. The reality is, even for people like you and me in really privileged situations, this is hard and this is difficult. So probably the thing out of ACT that I'm using most of all is self-compassion. When I lose it, when I get the cabin fever, when I get snappy with my loved ones, whatever, just, the default setting in my mind, probably like yours and everyone else's, is, the mind comes in, starts beating you up, telling you the I'm not good enough story. And the sooner I can remember to start kind of unhooking from that and practicing a bit of self-acceptance, a bit of self-compassion, acknowledging the pain and suffering, the better off I am. And then that enables me to then tap into my compassion for others and start using my ACT skills. So that's a very long-winded answer. But,
No. Well, it's important. Jules kind of sums up. She says, thank you for sharing your honesty. This is just how I feel now too. And I must say, this lockdown situation that, most countries are in one level or another, it's not a new thing now. Now we've been in a number of weeks, and I think people have got over the initial shock of what a lockdown is and what the virus is, and lots of people dying. I mean, we get told every minute of the day. That's all it seems to be on. If you're on any media at all, whether it's traditional news media, newspapers, there's nothing else going on in the world as far as they're concerned. It's just about the number of people that are dying or infected or so on. But we've gone into a kind of a situation where, all the funny videos have gone and all this kind of stuff, and people are now becoming kind of acclimatized in one way or another that we're in a new situation. It's actually quite frightening. We're getting a lot of pressure within our households, just like you said. We're getting our tolerance levels going down, irritability is kind of going up. All sorts of fake news coming in that we don't exactly know where we stand, and when things get, when the lockdown kind of starts to get less restrictive, will there be second waves and so on? So there's a lot of that underlying anxiety, apart from the economical, problems that people might have, the health anxiety that people might have. Will I get it? Will I not get it? Or they might know people, grief, because they might know people who have been infected and maybe possibly even passed away.
Well, I mean, there's all of that, isn't there? And then the loss of jobs and, some of the horrible stuff we've been hearing about, the increase in trauma, domestic violence, and, just whatever kind of issue you've got is going to get magnified. And whatever you're struggling with, you're going to be struggling with it more just from being in this situation. And the uncertainty of it all, the anxiety around that affects us all,
Absolutely. So over what I wanted to do was to bring on people that in the community that I know of, which is the ACT community, acceptance, commitment therapy, commitment training, commitment coaching, whatever you want to call it, community, the people that I know, the people that I'm friends with, my colleagues, to share their wisdom, their experience, their knowledge, not necessarily from a professional point of view, in other words, the professional, but to the general public. What can we offer people that are watching this? And there's a lot of people on, and there's a lot of people that will be watching this after even this live is gone, just to help them get through it. I mean, even one person is asking now, what can help us practice acceptance in those times? It is hard, isn't it? People want to change the reality right now, it says. How using your wisdom, your personal experience, and your knowledge, share with us, if you can, what we can do.
Well, I think probably the first thing we can do is try to talk with a Glaswegian accent. Because I found, like, when I'm listening to you, Dov, that if I talk about things a bit like this, in kind of on the tune, then suddenly, okay, then everything seems so much better. Have you found that yourself, Dov? Sorry, that was a very bad accent. I just wanted to just
Scotland to improve that. I definitely will.
okay, but there is something nice about having a Glaswegian accent in these times, isn't there? It's kind of it's much better than a stiff upper lip, old chap. It's good to let's make some room for these painful feelings and bring in a bit of self-compassion, eh? More seriously, people know me best for my book, The Happiness Trap, but there's another book actually called The Reality Slap, which is really written for crisis and uncertainty. And, the title reflects it all. When reality just slaps you in your face, turns your life upside down, what do you do? And in that book, it's based on 4 steps, all based on an ACT approach, which are drop anchor, hold yourself kindly, take a stand, and find the treasure. And my earpiece keeps falling out here. In case you hadn't noticed. I find that these 4 steps are very, very useful. I run through them in my own life. And at the times when I'm remembering to do this ACT stuff, I find that they really do help. So drop anchor is a very simple grounding exercise. When an emotional storm blows up, there's lots of difficult thoughts, feelings, emotions swirling around, jerking us around the place. Dropping anchor is a simple 3-step mindfulness practice that we can do in a few seconds, or we can build up into longer exercises taking several minutes that really helps us to kind of steady ourselves within that emotional storm. And then hold yourself kindly is a way of kind of talking around self-compassion, bringing a kind and caring and supportive approach to yourself while you're in the midst of your pain. Taking a stand really means living your values in the face of this crisis. There's so much that's out of your control. One of the lovely things about values is that they're in our control. I can come back to my core values. What sort of person do I want to be as I go through this? How do I want to treat myself and others and my body? What do I want to put into the world through my actions on a moment-to-moment basis? So kind of taking a stand. And then last little piece of this is kind of find the treasure in the midst of this pain, suffering, uncertainty, anxiety, all of these difficult feelings. In the midst of this, there are little things that I can treasure and appreciate. A loving moment with the person who I'm in isolation with, or a joyful moment with my dog or my cat, or just the pleasure of some yummy food that I cook. That doesn't magically get rid of all my pain and all my suffering, but it gives me something to treasure in the midst of that. And so if you want, we can go through some of these things now in the last remaining 9 minutes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, dropping anchor is a particularly useful approach. Back in 2015, I wrote a protocol for the World Health Organization, an ACT-based protocol for use in refugee camps in Syria and Uganda. And they've just published the first research on that, showing that it was very effective. And in the refugee camps, people were in these horrible situations, often victims of warfare, domestic violence, and living in tents with a lack of resources, food and water, and yet they were able to apply ACT principles to help them actually survive and thrive within that awful situation. And dropping anchor was the first mindfulness exercise that we introduced in that program. And so if you're watching this or listening to this, I'll encourage you to kind of go through this with me, as long as you're not driving a car or operating heavy machinery or doing brain surgery or something like that. And basically, dropping anchor begins by just taking a moment to acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. So just take a moment to notice what your thoughts are, notice what you're feeling in your body, just kind of, you might sometimes, if there's some very difficult thoughts and feelings, it's useful to use a little phrase. I'm noticing anxiety, or here's a feeling of sadness, or I'm noticing thoughts about corona, or I'm having some feelings of anger, something like that, silently, just acknowledging the thoughts and feelings that are present. And then so that's the first step, and you can remember that by the initial A. A is for acknowledge. The C is for come back into your body. So acknowledge the thoughts and feelings, and then find a way of coming back into your body. So for me, I'm a big fan of stretching. So if you're at your computer or something like that, have a little stretch now, kind of stretch your arms out, stretch your neck. You might straighten your back. I'm pushing my feet into the floor as I'm doing this. So I'm kind of acknowledging my anxiety about doing this webcast live. I'm acknowledging some frustration that my earpieces keep dropping out of my ears. That's never happened before. I'm noticing some sweatiness of my hands. I always get anxious when I'm kind of doing anything in front of an audience, whether that's online or whether that's live. And at the same time, I'm coming back into my body. I'm stretching, I'm moving, I'm sitting forwards. I can feel my feet on the floor. So there's thoughts and feelings here, and there's a body here. And so the A is for acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. The C is for come back into your body. And then the E is for engage in what you're doing. So I'm now engaging in what I'm doing. There's a whole bunch of stuff here. There's a room around me. There's a light source over there. There's these kind of earpieces dropping out. There's kind of a computer in front of me, and presumably millions of people watching this webinar. And I'm bringing my attention back, focusing on what I'm doing right here, right now. So that's E for engage in what you're doing. So that acronym is ACE: acknowledge your thoughts and feelings, come back into your body, engage in what you're doing. And you can do this over and over again. When you get very fast at this, you can do this in just 30 seconds or a minute. But you can also turn it into a much longer mindfulness practice, and you can do kind of 5 or 10 minute versions of this. And if you like, Dov, I don't know if this is possible, but I can send you some recordings of dropping anchor exercises that your viewers or watchers can access if they want, kind of so that they can practice this.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that. And what will be good is that we can watch it again and again and learn that from you and actually practice that, because it's all in the practicing. It's not just, watching a webinar and that's it done. It's about practicing. And I personally practice these things daily. I actually intermingle it into the other contemplative practices that I have. And I think anybody can do it in any way that they wish. And I think they're very versatile and flexible. And they work, they really do work. And
well, it's I mean, that's, as you said, you can do them anytime, any place, anywhere. You can do them when you're waiting in the car at red traffic lights or during an advert break on the telly. You can really create your own exercises, anything that just involves acknowledging what's going on inside you, coming back into your body. Some people like to use the breath or stretch or yoga poses, and then just that re-engaging in what you're doing.
So I just want to go to a few of our viewers' comments, because they've taken the trouble to write in, and it's important that they get a little bit of a thing. So Carmen Moon says, Russ, I love your metaphors. Is there any possibilities to have them in a book? Or do you also have anecdotes? Sorry, it's not about Corona. But yeah, you do have them in your books.
I do. My books are full of metaphors. And of course, some of these metaphors are mine. Many of these metaphors are kind of classic metaphors that predated me. Steve Hayes and Kelly Wilson and Kirk Strozel, the guys who created ACT, came up with those long before I came on the scene. But my books are full of metaphors, and you can get my books in all good bookstores and even in some of the really crappy bookstores. So.
And I recommend it. Thank you, Carmen. So Jules says hi from Nottingham. And we've got another user that says, oh no, we've read that already. So John Marawaski says, hi, nice meeting you.
Hi, John.
Miri Moore says, how do you manage the worry that life in the future will not be the same?
Yeah, well, I think it's a given that life will not be the same. That Corona's not going to disappear. We're going to have to adjust to a new society where we live with this, and none of us knows what that's like. So worrying, is kind of your mind telling you about something that's important. So what you want to do is kind of tune into your worry and ask yourself, what's this telling me that's important? It's telling me that, is it telling me something about self-care? Is it telling me about something about looking after my loved ones? Is it telling me something about what I care for in the community around me? And move from worrying into living your values. If I'm worrying about my health or the community or the world around me, what are little ways that I can start living my values in terms of self-care, looking after my body or my health, or caring for the people I'm in isolation with? What are little things I can do to contribute to the well-being of the world around me? Obviously, all those things that we're all doing, like washing our hands and social distancing, are all contributing to something bigger. And of course, worrying is going to keep showing up over and over and over. It's a normal psychological process. It's your mind telling you that there are things you need to deal with. There are dangerous, worrying things out there that there are things that may hurt us or harm us. There's uncertainty, there's unpredictability. And so one of the first steps in dealing with worrying is to focus on what's in your control. You can't control the future. You can't control the world out there, but you can control what you do with your behavior right here, right now. So come back to this body, drop an anchor, get in touch with these arms and legs, and ask yourself, am I living my values in effective ways right now? Am I doing something that's contributing to my life or the life of other people I care about? And if so, then engage in what you're doing, focus on it. But if not, then maybe change what you're doing to do something that is living those values more effectively or more meaningful for you. And what will happen is your mind will try to hook you with these worries and pull you out of what you're doing. And you can't just stop your mind from generating worrying thoughts, but you can recognize when you've got hooked and go, oh, okay, my mind's just hooked me with worrying. And then drop anchor, come back into your body and focus again on what you're doing right here, right now.
So thank you for that. Well, last two, and then that'll be us. Amanda, I think you've answered it, but just to be specific for Amanda Goldman, asked when these reactions are so ingrained and automatic, are these techniques that you're talking about, will they also break that, automaticity when they're unhelpful?
Yeah, look, with practice, for sure, but you have to be realistic. There are times that I forget all of this stuff that I teach and train and write about, but I'm a lot better at doing it today than I was 20 years ago. So the more you practice, the better you get. And at the same time, let's also practice self-acceptance and self-compassion. You're never going to be perfect. There'll be times you forget this stuff, you screw up, your automatic reactions do jerk you around.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm nodding my head because I'm exactly the same. One day I'm doing really well. The next morning I wake up and the whole thing's gone out the window. Our last comment of the day is close to my heart. Where is it gone? Just disappeared now. Oh, yeah. So it's hello from Scotland. Oh, thank you for inviting us. So there you go. You got even a Scottish audience as well.
Can I just apologise to all the Scots for that atrocious Scots accent? I should have practiced a bit beforehand. It's not one of my one of my best.
Last month we were due, if you remember, to meet in London for a drink and a meal. Unfortunately, that's been postponed. Hopefully, it will come around again soon. In the meantime, Russ Harris, thank you very much for joining me on the virtual conference.
Thank you. Thanks. And good luck, everyone. Take care in these crazy times.
Bye for now.
Bye.